Our guest today was formerly a plumber in Sydney, Australia. He has a love for teaching and educating, which led him to start a podcast for trade-related business owners. It's called The Site Shed. He lives in Sydney's Northern Beaches area with his wife, Amanda, and when he's not working in the digital marketing company that he owns, you'll either find him surfing, skiing, or training. Proud Nation, really excited to have him with us today. Please welcome to the show, Matt Jones. Hey, Matt.
G'day. How are you?
Good to have you, man. And, I got to ask, just because I know that in Australia the toilet flushes in a different direction, but is it still righty tighty, lefty loosey?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're dealing with gas.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Have you guys been out here before?
I've never been, but I look forward to my first journey, hopefully soon.
We're going to come. Somebody's going to invite us. That's what we're hoping on.
Okay.
Somebody's going to invite us to Australia, and we can go.
I see where you're going with this. Yeah, that's funny. I have a lot of colleagues and friends and acquaintances and whatnot in the States, and whenever they come out, actually, Al Levy, he gets here next Wednesday, who's been a guest on both our shows a number of times. Yeah. It's always one of the first things people say. They go to the washroom, they come back, and they're like, geez, your bathrooms are crazy. What's with this toilet thing?
That's funny. Well, man, you've been started as a plumber, so you've got a background in trades, and I know you own a digital marketing company that specializes in helping trade-based businesses. And but you're a fellow podcaster as well, and obviously in talking to you and listening to your show, which I'm a fan of, and try to listen to every episode. I can tell that you enjoy educating, you enjoy bringing good information to business owners to help them grow. Tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how did you get involved in the trades as a plumber and come up through that experience, and then decide to start what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the big messages that I like to try and deliver through the site shed is it's not. I mean, I don't know so much in the States if it's the same, but I know here in Australia, when you're going through the the academic system, schooling and whatnot, there's such a massive emphasis placed on getting good grades, going to university, going to get a job, all this kind of stuff. And like for people out there and kids that are not necessarily academic, like myself, you're just almost made to feel like a bit of a loser. So it was that realization, I suppose, as I grew up and I started to meet a lot of successful business owners that never had that background, that didn't go to university, that didn't do that traditional academic path. It made me realize that it's not really the case, and trades is such a great way, it's such a great opportunity that can open so many doors and, lead you into so many different avenues. And I'm a testament to it, one of the messages I like to deliver is where you start is not where you end up. And, going to do a trade is such a great option for kids or anyone out there. If you don't necessarily have to be of that mindset, well, I must go to uni and I must do all this kind of stuff, I did a plumbing apprenticeship when I was fresh out of school, pretty much, or out of, you got high school, right?
Yeah, right.
Or senior school or whatever. Yeah. And so I was maybe 17 when I started my apprenticeship toward almost 18. And, but I never looked back. I loved it. And I was really enjoying the trades. I loved the people interaction. And I love, I suppose, being out there learning, doing things with your hands and, that mechanical thinking as well. Even now, I look at half my friends and they can't even change a tire. And I just think, you guys are so retarded. It's not that hard. But I think it comes back to that, having that mechanical thinking, which is what you learn through the trades. And it's so transferable into so many different things in life. And it's been the best thing I ever did. It's taken me all around the world. I worked in the United States. I worked in Canada. I worked in the United Kingdom, France, all these places. We used to travel to Germany for trade shows and do all this kind of stuff, and that was all through having a plumbing background. And so, one of the big messages we like to deliver is, where you start isn't always where you end up. And by doing a trade, you can open doors into many different things. Look at me. I run a digital marketing company now, and I used to be a plumber. I still am a plumber, I suppose. I still have the bit of paper that says it. So, yeah. And anyway, so. The journey into where I am now, well, I was working within sort of a sales and marketing role for a plumbing company, and that role there, we were selling a high ticket product which we would source out of Europe and we distribute through Asia Pacific. And basically, a lot of the clients that would come to us, they'd buy these huge setups, $300,000 worth of equipment, and then they'd come back to us and say, "Look, if I don't start selling this stuff, I'm going to be sleeping out of the trailer you just sold me." So I'd say, "Well, go get it on your website and start marketing it." And well, I haven't got a website, so I was like, "Oh, okay." So for a couple of these guys, I built websites for them. I'm not really knowing what I was doing, but just knowing the right people. And anyway, one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was like, you know what, there's something in this. So there wasn't really anybody locally that was really focusing on trade specific. Like it was all, we do websites for a small business and we do websites for anybody that comes to us. But I was like, you know what, I'm just going to niche myself down in this, and we're really going to focus on websites for trade, tradies, as we call them. I think you guys like to call them contractors. But yeah, then that sort of led into marketing, and then a couple of years down that journey, I was, we were getting a lot of traction, and there were a lot of people tuning in and listening to what we were saying because it was so specific. And I thought it was going really well, except I wasn't really reaching the audience that I would like to, that I wanted to reach. Like I really wanted a broader audience because we were helping a lot of people, but we were thinking, how can we make this more accessible to people, all over the place that aren't necessarily within our small little, Australian network. So I started the podcast, the SiteShed podcast, and that launched in February of 2016. And within 4 days, we hit new and noteworthy in iTunes, and we've been there ever since. And now we're Australia's leading podcast for trade businesses, and we've got a pretty rapidly growing audience over in the North America market as well. So yeah, it's been great.
Very good.
That's awesome.
Well, so in that background and in doing what you've done and helping business owners, I'm curious what you see as being one of the biggest challenges for business owners in the trades. What do you see that like if you could help them with one thing, and the thing that keeps coming up over and over and over again with business after business, what do you think that thing is?
Look, education is really the fundamental roadblock, I think, with pretty much everything, and that's not through anyone's fault necessarily. Like you don't know what you don't know, and I think one of the biggest roadblocks is as a tradesman, you go to university, you go to college, and you study your trade, and then you go to work and you learn how to apply what you've learned at college, all that kind of stuff, and you leave there with a really good understanding of how to swing a hammer. But when it comes to going out and running a business, there's nothing that really teaches you that kind of stuff. So I think education is key, and that's really where we try and focus a lot of our attention on helping people through understanding the various areas of a business and how to run certain, run the certain departments in different areas, and how to get an understanding of that, because there's a lot of especially like working in the digital marketing space, there's a lot of companies out there that like to pull the wool over their clients' eyes. And even yesterday, I was in a meeting with a now client, and he was having this, somebody do SEO for them, and it's costing him $1,000 a month, and he's not getting any results from it. His phone's not ringing, and I'm like, well, what are they doing? And he's like, well, I don't really know. And this is like the common concern that we constantly get with companies. They don't have a basic understanding of what they're investing in, which means they're very exposed to a degree. So we'd like to put a lot of emphasis on teaching people the fundamentals. So it puts them in a position where they're empowered to either, do the work themselves or bring it in-house or outsource it, but outsource it knowing what's being done. So we like to equip people with the knowledge enough so that they at least have that, they know enough to be dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, we have those same conversations. So it's nice to know you have the same ones over there too. The other thing I wanted to ask, because another conversation that we have quite often is they will call us and they think they have a marketing question, but after we've asked the series of discovery questions that we go through and ask, we find out they don't really have a marketing issue. They have a business issue. and which is the main reason we started our podcast. So it's sounding to me that you're having the same issues over there.
Yeah, it sounds like we're 3 peas in a pod. It's a bloody big pod. Yeah, look, I mean, and one of the big things that I noticed early in the piece was buzzwords, and people know buzzwords. However, they don't necessarily understand. They don't know what they want. So, people, for example, people will come to us and they say, "Oh, look, I need to run I need SEO." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Tell me a little bit about your business." And they're like, "Well, I've got an emergency service plumbing business, and we operate in this area." And I'm just like, okay, great. So like people understand, people have heard things and they think they know what they want, but then when you dive deeper, you really figure out, okay, SEO is probably not going to help your phone ring. You need AdWords, or you need, Facebook marketing or something. So you've got to be receptive to the fact that people, you've got to ask enough questions to really figure out what it is that they want, because if you don't get good at that, then you end up giving them a solution that they've asked for, but it's not going to help them get to where they want to go. So it's the same with business, is what you were just saying then. Like people, they'll often, like say, "Oh, this isn't working because of X, Y, Z." But then when you dive deeper, and I know we just had a bit of a chat about that offline, so often it falls back on, the owner themselves and the way they've been, the way they've onboarded staff, or the way they've recruited, or managing expectations, or, different procedures and stuff that's happening in the company. And, it's so easy just to pass the buck to somebody else and say, "No, you weren't the right fit for the company. You've dropped the ball," when in reality, it so often falls back on management.
Yeah, it really does. It's, when I signed up for business ownership and being an entrepreneur, my thinking was that I was going to be growing my skills in business, like how to make the right move, the right strategies, the right tactics to, get ahead and all of that. And what I've realized in business ownership is that it's less about all of that, and it's more about growing as a person, as a human being, as a leader, as somebody who can manage my relationships, manage my time, just basic like human betterment stuff, and not even business related. But the better I get at managing myself as a human being, the better business owner I become.
Yeah, exactly right. And we've got quite a large Facebook community, and we get a lot of people commenting on various things, complaints and stuff like that, and things that are happening in their business. And so often I'll post a comment in there which might be, what are some of the issues you guys are having with some of your employees, and comments will come back like saying, "Oh, well, there's just no one out there that can do the work as good as I can do it," or there's, the people I employ are always idiots and they always end up leaving. And, like as soon as you hear that, that's an immediate red flag. It's like, okay, well, tell me about how many staff you've turned over in the last year. "Oh, well, like 20, because they're all freaking idiots." And you're like, yeah, okay, I can tell you who's an idiot. So I think like that, making people understand, and, again, education, like they don't know what they don't know. And it's not until someone tells them that, okay, you're actually the bottleneck here, you're the idiot, that then they realize, oh shit, maybe you're right.
Yeah.
You've got, it's really difficult though for all of us when somebody points the finger to me and says you're an idiot, because my immediate reaction is, no, I'm not. But if you can hold up a mirror and I can see that I'm an idiot, then all of a sudden it's easier for me to make changes. So, I think the real goal here is, at least in my world, is to make sure that we are partnering and coaching people to where they discover for themselves the issues that they need to change, and also discover how to make those changes. And if they can do that through education, through some self-discovery tools, through some of those things, I think it really sets them up to have a better experience all the way through.
So one of the biggest moment, penny drop moment in my life was when one of my, I suppose, coaches, mentors, and friend, Peter Cox, who's one of Australia's leading leadership consultants, and I'm going to introduce you guys because you need to get him on your show. He introduced me to a book called Personality Plus by a lady called Florence Littauer, and Personality Plus is a book which is about profiling, and it helps you ascertain what your prominent personalities are. So we're typically made up. It dates back to like an ancient Greek mythology, but and since then there's been a number of different variations on it. You might have heard of disc profile and all that kind of stuff. It's all the same stuff, but basically what it talks about is that us as people, we're made up of a combination of 4 different personality types. And through reading that book and understanding what type of personality was, I immediately realized why I pissed people off so much. And it was an amazing moment because I right at that point, I was like, oh my God, this is why I annoy people so much, because these are my personality traits, and I'm not communicating to the other types in the right way. And that was a massive shift for me. And so that book, and I recommend that book. That's probably, I've given that. I used to order that book by the case and give it out to people because it was so powerful. So yeah, I think that's really one of the biggest stepping stones. And for somebody that's got a strong sort of leadership personality, or a type D sort of person, like reading something like that is really important, because it makes you realize that, okay, people aren't responding to you because of the way you're communicating to them, and everything changes once you understand that. Everything. You understand the type of person you're dealing with, and you learn how to communicate with them on their level and all that kind of stuff. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and unless you don't care about how you're communicating or people understanding you, I mean, if that's not a goal, if you don't desire to be understood or to have people hear what you need them to do and respond to that by going and doing or whatever it may be in a business or leadership role, if you don't care, then fine, don't change. But if you want a result, and you realize that what you've been doing isn't getting that result, and you finally understand why it's not getting that result, now you're empowered to do a different thing to achieve that result. It's that old saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting as well, and like you guys will probably relate to this. Our audience, so people that listen to podcasts, I find, are people that are looking to change, and they're open to these ideas. So when I say something on a podcast and I talk about, it might have been an episode that I've heard on another show or something like that, people will go and listen to it, or people will go and buy a book, because they're the people that are actually keen to learn, and they're keen to advance themselves. When I was a plumber, if I had gone and tried to give that book to people that I worked with, most of them couldn't have cared less. So I think one of the cool things about being in the podcasting community is that you are constantly surrounded with people that are looking to better themselves, and you're constantly surrounding yourselves with people that are open to suggestion, and they're open to criticism. It's not that they're willing to look, the truth head on and say, okay, yeah, right. Well, maybe I am not doing this right, and they're willing to take that counsel on board. So it's kind of cool little. It's a cool little industry, the podcasting industry, in the sense that people are actually there to learn.
Absolutely, yeah, we found the same thing.
Yeah, I also think that podcasters are a different breed too, which I really do like, because I find that they're really what I call go-givers. They give a lot of information and try to get guests that give a lot of information, so that they really bring value. So, I mean, for the most part, that's what I've found just almost across the board, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people out there that are really good at stuff, that are willing to share it. But, if it wasn't through the majesty of podcasting, it wouldn't be available to a lot of people. So I think this whole world has opened up a huge opportunity to people that otherwise, wouldn't have had exposure or wouldn't have had knowledge to, the sort of education that we can now bring to the table.
Yeah, totally agree. So tell me a little bit about your experience with Google.
How long you got?
Yeah.
It's a 14-hour podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make sure you had the same reaction I would.
Look, there's Okay, so what do you mean, like in regards to Google? Because that's a pretty big question.
Yeah.
Can you
As marketers, and we know that our entire business model is built around some very shifting sand. I mean, Google,
right?
Our saying is that you wake up on any given day and come into the office, and if Google hadn't changed something by noon, you're checking your pulse to make sure you haven't died or something, because it's just constant change. And we play in this world, and we have to interpret for business owners what Google can do for them, what their misconceptions about what Google can do for them, all of these things, and negotiate that in order to really play in the Googleverse. And it's a challenge. So yeah, I think is that kind of what you were going for? Yeah.
Let me make it really, really simple for everybody out there, okay? And this is exactly the same thing that I told the fellow I was meeting with yesterday. Google has exactly the same interests that our customers have. They want our customers to be able to find information relevant to what they're looking for quickly, and it's got to serve a purpose. And that's the bottom line. So everything that goes on your website or anything that you put out there on the internet should be put out there for the benefit of your customer. And then you go down that whole, then you go down the path of, okay, then how do I make it show up on search engines? But it should always be customer first, information relevant, okay?
Yep.
So people out there that, at the end of the day, like, and what you were saying, sorry, was it Taylor or Carter who said who gave me that clarification?
That was me originally, Taylor, but then Carter always comes back and explains what I mean.
Okay, cool.
He's good at it.
So in relation to, let's talk about, algorithm changes and things like that. If you look at all of the significant algorithm changes within, Google search engine over the last, 10 years, the only real changes they've made that have knocked people out of the park are changes that have been eliminating shortcuts. Okay? You take the Panda update, for example, or you take the Penguin update, for example. Mm-hmm. Like, all these things were there because people were cutting corners and they were doing things, what is now coined as black hat. And basically black hat is things that haven't been done correctly, So at the end of the day, all Google is trying to do is improve the journey for the customer, your customer, and make the content that's out there more available to people that are looking for it. So it's really simple. Like, at the end of the day, if you're doing things the right way, if you're creating good content, if it's content that's designed for your customers or for people that are potentially looking for your services, then you can't go far wrong. All the updates in the world aren't going to knock you out of the park with that. But it's all these little things that people try and do, to cut corners and get it ranking quicker and all this kind of stuff. Then that's the kind of thing that eventually the algorithm will change and and you'll get hit by it.
Yeah, we tell people all the time, if you want to do it quick, it's probably going to go away. Right. Google is really good with all the things that takes intent, time, effort, just like anything else you would do in a business. If you're going to go do a plumbing job, you're not going to go take a crescent wrench and that's the only thing you're going to do, and a hammer, and see what you can do with it. And that's the way I look at hackers. And these guys, the black hat people, it's just like, y'all need to go away.
And look, one of the biggest, my pet hates, and again, this is the conversation I was having yesterday with a guy, and I have it all the time, and you guys would be the same, I'm sure. This guy's spending all this money on search engine optimization, and he's getting these reports every month, and these reports are basically, we've added you to. We've added these backlinks and we're doing all this kind of stuff. And I look at his website, all the on-page SEO is horrendous. Yep. None of it's geared for local search. None of it's geared for, like service location sort of stuff. And he's paying $1,000 a month for these guys sitting in India that are giving him backlinks to these ridiculous platforms that is of no relevance. That's not SEO. Like the foundational setting stone for SEO will always come back to content.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, we're not always talking about, blog posts and that kind of stuff or website content. It could be anything. It could be video content. It could be the content that you're posting on social media channels. It could be podcasting, whatever it is. Like, the bottom line is the content that you are creating, it needs to be created in a way that is, first of all, of benefit to your audience, and second of all, has factors in there that are ticking the search engine boxes.
Yep.
And so, for example, blog posts or podcasts. If you look at all the podcasts that I've done in the past, every one of them has one specific topic, and we don't go off that topic. It's always geared towards the one topic, or in Google's terms, a keyword. So, if we're talking about SEO, then the podcast is about SEO. If we're talking about AdWords, the whole podcast is about SEO, about AdWords, and so on and so forth. It might be about leadership. It could be about onboarding staff. It could be about recruiting staff. But it's always specific to one topic. And by doing that, you're not giving any mixed messages, first of all, to your audience, because they know, okay, well, I'm going to be listening to this podcast on this topic. And second of all, you're going to be, when you're creating that page on the website and when you're creating that podcast, you can optimize it for that keyword. And that's powerful. Mm-hmm. And so I think at the end of the day, when we're talking about, Google, they're a bunch of pricks and all this kind of stuff, and they are, don't get me wrong. But the bottom line is that they are trying to enhance the journey for the customer, and cutting corners is what will get you penalized.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense, because if you do the best for your customer, you're going to make more money. And Google's a corporation, and they want to make more money, so they want to give a quality product to every customer that searches in their world. So
I've got a funny story for you. So one of my clients here in Sydney, he would have the biggest plumbing, heating, electrical company in Australia, probably. Well, actually, definitely. So service-wise, he's in Australia. He's in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. Like, it's a huge company. Anyway, he was building a new website. We weren't building the website for him, but he wanted me to do the content creation for his, like, the copywriting for his website. So I wrote his entire website for him, and he spends about, I don't know, maybe $200,000 a month on Google AdWords on AdClick. So he's got, like, obviously his own Google's, what do you call it, manager, ad manager, or whatever they call themselves.
Yep.
And so we went into Google headquarters in Sydney, and we had a meeting, and it was basically the Google ad manager. He had his campaign manager, that's what they call him. His campaign manager. He had there was two other people that were working on the AdWords side of things. There was his SEO specialist. There was his web designer. Then there was he and I, and we were sitting in this room, and I was just absolutely dumbfounded. Sitting in a room with people at that caliber and people of that level of, I suppose, hierarchy in their areas, how many of them had absolutely no idea whatsoever about any of the other areas. And so, I was brought into that meeting because our approach to anything digital is very holistic. Like, I coin it the digital ecosystem, and I like to, you'll hear me bang on about that over and over again on my podcast, digital ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And it's basically the way that, how everything ties together, and how your website relates to your SEO, and how your SEO relates to your AdWords, and how your AdWords relates to your, your Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff. And these guys, these AdWords specialists, they were talking about, driving traffic back to, back to pages and all this kind of stuff. And, they had no idea about how the content that was on that page could improve the conversions on the website. From their AdWords campaigns. And then, the SEO guy was talking about, we need to do this and this and this and this. And, we'd have all this content on there. And I'm like, you can't have all that content on there, because, all you're thinking about is SEO, and you're not considering the conversion elements that need to go on that page, and you're not considering the, what happens once someone clicks on an AdWords ad and it gets back to that, back to that page. It's stuff full of content, and people aren't going to read it, and it lowers conversions, all this kind of stuff. So there's a whole ecosystem that needs to be considered there. And, it's amazing at some of the highest levels, people just have no freaking idea.
Nope.
No, and for a
it.
business owner to become educated at that level about all of the details of that world is probably not the best use of their time. And that's where I think we in digital marketing, those of us who seek to serve clients and really distinguish ourselves by our service and not simply, take their money and promise the world and deliver nothing, but truly want to provide a service and a result. There's a real need for people like us to be able to serve those, and I love the fact that you've really niched and specialized in helping those trade businesses that need that help. So that's cool. It's like we're brothers in arms. I mean, we get each other completely, from podcasting to business ownership and digital marketing. That's cool.
Yeah, it's good. And I think this is what's important about, doing these sort of things. Like, we really, people out there that are listening to this, they're sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, okay, well, that does kind of make sense. Like, why am I spending all this money on SEO and I don't even know what it's doing? Like, what am I actually investing in? How can I learn about it so that I know enough to make an educated and informed decision, based on, where I'm spending my money or what I'm getting back in return, all this kind of stuff. Because, like, realistically as well, as you and I know, with SEO, like, it is a long-term strategy, and it's worth doing, definitely, if it's done correctly, because it will stay there and it will remain there. But, like, for the better part, when you're spending all this money on just a backlinking strategy alone, it's a waste of money.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's I don't know about down there, but there's a tremendous amount of companies here that sell quote unquote SEO services. And they're just and they're churning AdWords.
Yeah, that's all they do.
That's all they do is AdWords.
Is that right?
Yes, it's awful. People think they got SEO, and I'll look, and it's, they've said, well, they told me I could have 5 keywords, and then their ads up, and I'm like, so all you got's AdWords. So it's crazy.
One of the biggest, and look, for all the listeners out there, like you guys out there that are contractors, and like, it's really important to understand that. When you're talking about SEO for your website, it's got to be content based. Like, make sure that all of your on-page stuff is right. And if I could leave the listeners with one thing, it's this. And I've said this a lot recently, speaking from stage in Vegas and a couple of events in Sydney and whatnot. If you can make that mental mind shift from, okay, I need more leads, to how can I improve the conversions from the leads I'm currently getting, that's a massive paradigm shift for people, because so many companies are caught up in getting more and more leads that they tend to neglect the ones that they've currently got, and they also tend to neglect the journey of the customers they are already getting. Like, what's happening once they get there? How can you better improve your conversions? So, say, for example, you've got a website that's converting at 5%, and you're spending $1,000 a month on AdWords. What if you spent the same amount of money on AdWords and you improved your conversions to 10%? Like, you've effectively not spent any more money and you've doubled your return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the paradigm that people need to start thinking in, because
we call them lead junkies or AdWords junkies. I mean, they're just addicted to getting the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one, but they're not. Their burn rate through those leads is just ridiculous. And if they'd stop long enough to really build a system that helped them convert more of those leads, they'd spend less money and make more money. And it's a whole different kind of mentality and mindset about marketing.
And one of the biggest shifts that we've made, and this is going to be a huge product for us next year, is we're basically working on a way, and it's pretty much done, but like a lead nurture program for companies, because like trade organizations, like contractors and tradies, they're absolutely garbage at this. Like, they don't have any automation set up in their business. So what happens in that follow-up process? Do you go out there, you give a client a bid, or a potential client a bid, a quote, proposal, whatever you call it, and then what happens next? You wait. No one happens. You might pick up a phone call and call them in 2 weeks, but then other than that, more often than not, there's nothing there. There's no system in place that automates that follow-up process. And so, we've been working really hard on developing a program which basically automates that follow-up process for them, so that it's done through automation. And you give someone a bid, and then they go straight into a sequence, and bang, 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 over the course of the next couple of weeks, they're constantly being nurtured, informed, educated, and reminded of what you've given them. So it's a paradigm shift there, because if you look at these guys how many quotes they're pumping out there. They're like, I need to get more quotes out because I need to get more work. It's complete. It's a fallacy. Like, that's not their problem. The problem is they're not following up properly, and they don't have any processes and systems in place that can streamline it for them.
Well, that's definitely true. Absolutely. I know we could probably keep going and have a great conversation. We definitely need to come back and continue this at some other time. But, I'm curious, and if people wanted to connect with you, what is the best way for them to be able to do that?
Man, just go to thesiteshed.com, thesiteshed.com. You'll get to all of our stuff there. We've got a really cool resources section with loads of really handy business tools that which you can get to from the website. You can join our Facebook community, which is just out of this world cool. Actually, you guys should get in there too. You'd love it. There's the podcast is obviously available through iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, wherever you consume your podcasting media. Or if you just want to send an email, you can send it to Matt@thesiteshed with 2 T's.
Awesome. Very good. I appreciate that, and definitely will encourage people to do that. We always like to end our guest interview by asking our guest if there's a quote that has meant something to them in their own business journey. Maybe you have a quote that you could share and maybe tell us what that means to you.
You're green and growing, or you're ripe and rotting. And that basically, I suppose what that means to me is, everything is an evolution. There's no start point and end point. You've got to constantly be on a journey towards, you've got to constantly be evolving. And, where you are right now, if you're doing everything correctly, will probably not be where you're going to be, in 12 months, 6 months' time. So you've got to make sure that you're in a position where you can facilitate change and you can really steer the ship in the direction that it needs to be going in order to get to those goals. And that's advice that I was given early on in business, and I think it's really powerful. You look at people that get stuck in their ways, and they stick to I'm sticking to my guns. It ain't broke, I ain't fixing it. That kind of mindset. It will break eventually if you don't evolve. Go and have a look at Nokia as an example.
Exactly.
So yeah,
that's good stuff. I think that's probably where we want to end it today. But it's just been great. Matt Jones, thank you for being on the show today.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.